simplify, make the lines clean and beautiful. So we're going to put the minimum amount of knuckle in there, just the minimum of everything. We're going to make it thin and flowing and beautiful. And you know, fingernails on the ladies can be tricky. It can be pretty easy sometimes to accidentally make them look like claws. If you know, the dividing line between a feminine long fingernail and a monster claw can sometimes be in the eye of the beholder. So when you're drawing your ladies' fingernails, one thing you don't want to do is make them too sharp. Okay, even though some people have fairly sharp fingernails, you want it to have a curve like that. You want to make sure it has a blunted end. Okay, so even though it comes out to kind of a point, don't ever actually make it into a point unless you want it to be a monster. And by the way, if you do want it to be a monster, remember that monsters don't have to have fingernails like us. If they have claws, let's say a monster has a claw, and here's his finger. Okay, and his finger is coming at you like that. Okay, it doesn't have to be on top like a fingernail is. No, this is a monster, right? So his claw could come right out of the middle. Claws don't necessarily come from the top, do they? Then we could show that there's a top there, you know, and show. So be aware that you should make some separation between your claws and your fingers. It's just a nice thing to do. So we're not going to show, I mean, if this is a beautiful hand, we might show just a little bit, you know, of the other side of the knuckle, and just maybe minimize all that stuff, but I'm just maybe show a little bit of it, and then, you know, maybe just a little three-dimensional type stuff where you show, like, put a little bit of shading on some of these parts. That could be in shadow, you know. See what the time is. I'm going to draw maybe one or two more hands and wrap this up, and we will get back into this as we go. As we draw other things, we will talk about the hands we're putting on. By the way, if you're drawing cartoon characters, remember that the basic cartoon character hand has only, how many fingers? 3. 1, 2, 3. That's the same hand Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, Fred Flintstone, Bart Simpson, and every funny cartoon character you can think of has a 3-fingered hand. And why? Because they're just 1 finger easier to draw, and you want to forget most of the details if it's a cartoon hand. And don't worry if the fingers are stubby, don't worry if they're short, don't worry if they're practically the same length. It's a cartoon! You know, you don't have to worry about that stuff. So, and this is getting messy. That big eraser. Alright, let's see what I can think of for a challenging type hand. Maybe that I can work up in a little more detail. Let's make it more. Here's our knuckles as a starting point. I don't even know what direction this hand's going to be, but let's make it coming at you. Okay, we're going to foreshorten. And we're going to put 1 finger there. And you know, I drew those circles in there so you could see them. Now I'm going to take them out so you can see what I'm doing next, okay? I'm just going to visualize that they're there for myself, but you visualize that they're there too. We can put these fingers wherever we want practically. Your hand can move into practically any position that you want it to. So this finger can be there and this finger can be there. Let's make it sort of a heavy metal salute here. And when I do this, I can already tell that that finger is too far over. So I'm not going to take out the front. I'll leave the front. I like the front. I'll leave the front right there. But this has to be more over. And this has to be more over. And this is probably a little far out. So again, we're making it. Where does the thumb go in the heavy metal thing? I don't know. It goes out to the side, kind of, doesn't it? We're doing the heavy metal, devil's horns, whatever you call that. Okay. It could also be Spider-Man doing a thwip. Okay. So, when we get to this point in our drawing, what do we do next? Next, we come in here and we show the joints, and we show them with our curved directional lines. Okay, so one here, boom, and one right there. This tells us, what does this tell us? It tells us that it's coming at us, okay? It's coming at us. You have to understand, we're looking at it, okay? If we weren't looking at it, what would it look like if it was like this? Picture that. Now picture it in that direction. Which direction is it going if it's like that? Okay, it's going away. It's the person holding it like this, away from you. But if it's going towards you, then we reverse the direction, okay? Right. I think that you're beginning to get what I'm saying here about these curves. Okay. Now we don't have to show what's behind these fingers as long as we know it's there and they're in roughly the right spot. We don't have to show what's behind them because they're blocking. They're blocking. Now, let me take out the bottom here, because even though this line curves like that, these fingers, they can curve the other way because they're tucking. They can be tucking back into the hand, okay? So if they're tucking, then this line is going to curve the other way. When you reach a point where something is changing direction, okay, here's a finger that's changing direction. This part is coming at you, this part is tucking away from you. Then you're going to show both sides of the knuckle. You may not show it that much. You may want to do a lot less than that, but you maybe show it a little more. Oh, let's get a whole finger in there. You maybe show it a little more up here and a little less down there, but you're going to show both sides of it if it's changing direction. And that's generally a rule with pretty much most things, that if you're changing direction on something, you kind of have to show both sides of the directional change. Okay, so once we get it here, then we got to put the ball in. We got to put the sort of wedge ball in. We got to put the mound in here. I believe that's actually called the mound of something in a fortune teller's book, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. I read a book on reading poems when I was a teenager, and that was so long ago. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, we put the mound in, put the ball in, put the wedge in, and we have our basic devil's horns or Spider-Man thwip with webbing coming out. So we are going to get back to this some other time. See how these joints can stack up on you. Okay. And then you can, and it's very possible to have your fingers, even though this finger is longer than that finger, in this case, I'm holding them the same length. I can make them the same length if I'm holding my hand in some funny position. So, and who's to say the hand isn't in a funny position? When I draw a hand, it's always in a funny position, right? I know some of you feel the same way. Right, so even if we have these fingers coming in like that, you know what? Instead of erasing that line, let's just make that the shadow. See, we can do that. And maybe show a little there. And this finger can be lower. You begin to see what I'm getting at here. And when it comes to if you have something that's really reaching forward like this, I mean, it's really forward. It's really reaching forward, then what you can do is, instead of making that one little tiny, sculptural shadow there, what I can do is I could take the part that's forward and make that part, out of the shadow, and then I could actually make these parts back here that are foreshortened or hidden, I can make them, yeah, I can put some shadow on them to emphasize what's going on here, you know, and you'd have to do more than that. But it's very common, you know, when you're drawing something, like let's say I got another fist here. Let's just draw a very basic fist. And by the way, you know what? Interesting thing about fists is that they aren't straight, equal. It's a mistake a lot of people make. Quite often, it's not unusual for one finger to come and be a little forward, and then the other fingers be more straight. And for example, if I was pulling the trigger of a gun, obviously, God forbid I should, but obviously one finger would be doing something like that, different. So I can have my fist here. And one finger can be a little, that doesn't look right, but you get the idea. They don't all line up straight. Put a ring on. Then we can use shadow to make it dramatic, right? That's one of the big things that you do with shadow, is you use it to make things look more dramatic. Okay, so I think I'm hitting a brick wall of being up all night here. So we're going to come back to this. Anya, my director, can you come over and give it a cut? We are absolutely going to come back to this and talk about it as we go through some other drawings, but I hope this is a good introduction, or at least a beginning introduction, a partial introduction to the very complicated subject of talking about hands. Okay, thank you, and look for some more videos soon.